your experience, you said there was a time when you were working 100% on the open source project, and now your time is divided. Do you have a preference between these two, or?
I like the project side of things because it's fun to see the randomness. I think like that to me was a lot of fun. Just seeing, I don't know, it could be a student from India or like some person working in enterprise in Romania. That kind of stuff was a lot of fun to just see like the people that would come out and like interact with them and be able to work on features there. Um, the product side is nice, but the product that I work on is the UDS software factory. So it's a lot of the same like world that I was in for 5 years in the Air Force, and so it's like, okay, I'll do this again. But it still is fun though because we are pushing the bounds of where things could be, and we're really trying to think about how a lot of modern software development practices that have happened in the last few years can be brought back. Because I would argue, a lot of the software factories are somewhere circa 2018, 2019, which is new. It's relatively new for the government, but there has been a lot of stuff that's happened in the last 5 years, even for as fast as technology moves. And so being able to take some of those new things, taking stuff like Six Store and then Toto and talking about attestations, that stuff hasn't really made its way into the DoD fully yet. And so we can really still do a lot there and still push the ball forward for that.
Yeah, I think things are going to be moving faster still, right? I mean, particularly in the area of security. So staying
Yes.
up, staying current is not easy, and very beneficial.
Right. Right.
To understand a little better your kind of daily life at work, like for instance, when you were 100% working on Zarf, the open source project, did you still get like guidance or sort of requests from the product side in terms of what you should work on, or was your job description to maintain the project, whatever makes the most sense for the project?
It was basically to maintain the project. So we had a unified backlog in GitHub. Everything went into a GitHub issue. So whether somebody messaged me in our internal Slack or in the K8 Slack, the answer was put it in a GitHub issue, and then we'll prioritize it and get to it.
Good
Um,
policy.
and so yeah, so that was a lot of how we dealt with certain things. Obviously, especially earlier on, a lot more of the requests, because more of the users were internal to the company, were around the company's priorities there. So but there was a lot of stuff that we did do with and for the community, and it was cool to see, even some large features, like Danny Gershman, who's one of the maintainers now from another company on Zarf called Radius Method. He implemented like the Argo CD support, which is not something any of our customers at all use, but it's something that was really cool to be able to see come into Zarf, and helps build that community around the product.
And I will
So
wager there will be some point in the not so distant future where your customers will want that as well.
yes, exactly, exactly. Yep.
Was there ever a pushback on the product side that like you're maintaining something that your customers don't need and why you have to spend your time there? Or was it always understood from your management as well as the customer pressures that it's something that you just need to do and it's okay if someone contributes something that you just currently don't have a use of?
Yeah, the Defense Unicorns started as an open source company, and it is core to its ethos. So there wasn't really much pushback from at least our side of things, because it was kind of expected. And a lot of times that helps you. It does actually help you accelerate your development when you can just work in upstream. There was some, part of Zarf uses like Git as a Git server, and some folks were wanting to use it as a package registry as well. Some of it's like Python and npm registries. And there were some issues there earlier on, that we were having, and it was just like, yes, okay, we could maybe make a wrapper around this or do our own project, but like it's faster if we just go to Git and open some PRs and then make that product better and then take the next version. And that's largely how we do things, even on the software factory side, where we're integrating something like SonarQube. If there's an issue with their Helm chart, like one of the folks on my team, he just had one of his PRs get released because there was an issue with um, some of the arguments that were passed to the container on the deployment in the Helm chart, and we needed to correct that for some of the stuff that we were doing. And so we just made a PR, fixed the problem, and then they released it. And it's a lot easier to do that than to try to fork the Helm chart and then try to do your own thing. And then like it just go with the flow, work with upstream, and then you'll be faster in the end. Even if you have to wait like a few weeks in between, like you probably have enough work to do in the meantime, and you can move on to other things. So yeah.
Nice. And since you're now working on both product and the open source project, have you had any conflict about this, or so far the ratio between open source and product work is still something that you're good with?
I think I'm pretty much good with it for the most part. I mean, my sort of from a software dev hat perspective, my heart is in the open source side because I really do like that work and just seeing the cool tech side of things. But from the mission impact side, I also know how important the product development is, and what impacts it can have. One of the moments I still remember kind of vividly was when we actually deployed the Tanker Planner tool to production, and we were sitting there in Qatar with the tanker planners having a cigar in the middle of the desert at night, and like just talking with them and seeing the smiles on their faces and the impact that it had to them. That really has an impact on you, and that's really like also really special. And so I think there's enough special stuff in both sides that I can enjoy that both.
Can you tell if there's like a fixed percentage of time that goes into like the open source project, or does it always vary how much you spend on each side?
It varies. For the most part, it's kind of down to the vision and direction because I'm on that UDS Software Factory product at this point. Most of my time is spent on the product side at this point, but it does significantly vary because if we're having something that we want to propose or introduce to Zarf, then I'm going to be spending a lot of time with Zarf, or Pepper or Lula because we're using those as the core of a lot of the stuff that we're doing too. So it does vary from week to week, and sometimes it's not even our own products; it's some other thing like SonarCube, like I mentioned, where okay, let's contribute to them and do these things. So I would say it's probably maybe 80% product, 20% project at this point, but um, that's there. And all of the stuff we make is still Apache 2, so it still is open source. It's just we're not trying to build a community around it quite yet, just to help focus the products.
Right. And I mean, it sounds like Defense Unicorns, you're as much of a services company as a product company, right? Where you're selling a specific activity, a specific service where you're leveraging what you've productified and what you're fully able to support. But
Mhm.
it's more of a services business, it sounds like, as opposed to a straight product business.
Yeah, it's a bit of both. We started as a very services oriented business, so pretty much when we started, we really had Zarf. That was it, and then really was just selling services around Zarf and kind of like different ways we could do that. As we've grown and as we've kind of explored certain things, we've added more open source projects, and then we've sort of solidified what it means to productize these things. And so, I would say we were a services company. We're somewhere in the middle now, and we're trying to move further and further into the product side of things, so that ideally
Hmm.
people can pick up more of what we do and just use it. We can be a little bit more hands off on those things. So a lot of what I'm doing with like the UDS Software Factory side of things is taking products like GitLab, and then building a robust Zarf package around them that has integrations with other technologies like Pepper for doing some policies and some of the other things we've built into UDS like Keycloak integrations and Grafana and Loki logging and monitoring, New Vector, and all of those things to build a secure platform. And the idea is eventually to build this into something that people can just take and compose and deploy without needing to have a whole bunch of how everything works together.
Okay.
And because it was built from the air gap to begin with, like it'll work anywhere. So
Cool.
In terms of people who you're working with within Defense Unicorns, is the setup um, kind of how you were like either 100% working on one of the open source projects, or like more product versus open source, or different team members have different ratios between their allocation to product versus project, if you
Yeah,
know?
different teams will have different things. So there's like a dedicated team around Zarf, and that team is going to be 100% on Zarf. And then different teams will have different things that they wind up doing. I think it's probably the 80-20 thing is probably about right for most UDS teams. So where I'm one of a couple of UDS teams on that side. But then Zarf, Pepper, Lula, they just work on their projects. And same thing with Leapfrog. And so they're just mostly focused on like, how do we build a community? How do we do these things? How do we work towards donation? What do we need to do that? Where are we targeting to go for all those things? Because all of those kinds of projects are the ones that we're actually targeting to donate to foundations, and that we do want to have these communities around. And there is a lot of benefit from that, because like with Zarf, like Radius Method is able to take that, and they're now a maintainer, but they're able to take that and build some of their own business around this thing. And having it in a foundation allows there to be a broader community, not just with like the random individuals, but also like with other fellow DoD contractors, because they also work in the same software factory space. And so that kind of helps to build some of a coalition and adoption within our own space, and also goes back to some of what I was mentioning before, where it would be nice if more DoD contractors actually adopted open source and got involved, because it could open up this huge market effectively to adoption there. So that's some of what we're driving and trying to push towards. But you need to have an open source community, and you need to have it donated for other people to trust you, because otherwise you could do a HashiCorp and or
Neutral
whatever.
home. A neutral home is helpful.
Yes.